Rich thinking rules, the wealth mindset formula. Let me begin with a simple observation I learned a long time ago, one that most people hear but very few truly understand. You don't become wealthy because of what you earn, and you don't stay poor because of what you lack. You become wealthy or you remain stuck, largely because of how you think. Money is not the starting point. Thinking is, and the quality of your thinking will always determine the quality of your life. I once knew two men who lived on the same street, worked similar jobs, and earned nearly the same income. They shopped at the same grocery store, drove similar cars, and complained about the same economy. 10 years later, one of them owned businesses, invested wisely, lived with options and freedom, and the other was still waiting for things to get better. Same city, same era, same opportunities, but radically different outcomes. The difference was not luck, talent, or connections. The difference was the rules they followed in their minds. You see, rich thinking has rules, just like success has laws. And whether we acknowledge them or not, these rules are always working. Poor thinking waits for permission. Rich thinking takes responsibility. Poor thinking asks, why is this happening to me? Rich thinking asks, what can I learn from this? And those questions, asked day after day, quietly build two very different lives. Most people are taught to focus on money before mindset. They chase income without upgrading identity. But wealth never responds to need. It responds to value. And value begins in the mind. Before your bank account changes, your thinking must change. Before your lifestyle improves, your standards must rise. And before your results multiply, your self-image must expand. One of the first rules of rich thinking is understanding that income follows personal development, not the other way around. If you work harder on your job, you might make a living. But if you work harder on yourself, you can make a fortune. Rich thinkers invest in books, skills, mentors, and experiences that stretch their perspective. Poor thinkers see learning as an expense. Rich thinkers see learning as leverage. I remember meeting a man who carried a book everywhere he went. Someone once asked him why he read so much, and he replied, "Because I cannot afford ignorance." That answer stayed with me. Rich thinkers understand that ignorance is expensive, even when it feels comfortable. Every missed opportunity, every repeated mistake, every unchallenged habit comes with a cost, and eventually that cost shows up in your results. Another rule of rich thinking is long-term vision. Poor thinking is obsessed with immediate relief. Rich thinking is committed to delayed gratification. One seeks comfort, the other seeks growth. One asks, what feels good today? The other asks, what builds a better tomorrow? And this difference in time horizon quietly separates dreamers from builders. Rich thinkers plant trees they may never sit under. They save when others spend. They practice when others rest. They build skills when others make excuses. And while it may look boring at first, it becomes beautiful over time. Because wealth, real wealth, is not created in bursts of excitement. It is built through consistent discipline applied patiently over years. Now here's an important rule that many people miss. Rich thinking does not avoid problems. It solves them. Poor thinking complains about problems and hopes someone else will fix them. Rich thinking understands that problems are invitations to grow stronger, wiser, and more valuable. The size of your income is often tied directly to the size of problems you are willing to solve. If you solve small problems, you earn small rewards. If you solve big problems, you earn big rewards. And if you solve problems for many people, you multiply your results. Wealth is simply compensation for service rendered at scale. That is why rich thinkers constantly ask, how can I add more value, instead of, how can I get more money? Another powerful rule of rich thinking is ownership. Rich thinkers own their choices, their habits, their outcomes. They don't blame the economy, the government, their upbringing, or their past. Not because those things don't matter, but because blaming them changes nothing. Ownership creates power. Responsibility creates freedom. The moment you accept full responsibility for your life, something remarkable happens. You stop waiting, you stop hoping, you start building. Rich thinkers understand that excuses may protect your ego, but they destroy your future. And discipline, while uncomfortable in the moment, creates comfort for a lifetime. Let me tell you something important about confidence. Rich thinkers do not wait to feel confident before they act. They act and confidence follows. They understand that clarity comes from engagement, not overthinking. Most people want certainty before commitment, but rich thinkers commit first and figure things out along the way. Momentum favors the bold. There is also a rule about association that cannot be ignored. Rich thinking carefully chooses environments. You become like the people you spend the most time with, whether you intend to or not. Poor thinking says, this is just how they are. Rich thinking says, This is who I am becoming. If you want to upgrade your income, upgrade your circle. If you want to upgrade your thinking, upgrade your conversations. Another essential rule is understanding the difference between price and value. Poor thinking buys based on price alone. Rich thinking evaluates value over time. Cheap decisions often become expensive later, and expensive decisions, when aligned with growth, often pay for themselves many times over. Rich thinkers ask, what does this cost me if I don't do it? Wealthy thinking also respects time. Rich thinkers protect their time because they understand that money can be replaced, but time cannot. They plan their days, set priorities, and say no without guilt. Poor thinking fills time with distractions and wonders why progress feels slow. Rich thinking knows that focus is a form of currency. Another rule of rich thinking is emotional control. Rich thinkers do not allow fear, anger, or impatience to dictate decisions. They feel emotions, but they don't obey them. Poor thinking reacts. Rich thinking responds. And over time, that emotional maturity compounds just like money does. One of the most powerful rules is this. Rich thinkers expect success, but they prepare for obstacles. They do not romanticize the journey. They respect it. They understand that setbacks are not signals to quit, but signals to refine strategy. Every challenge becomes feedback, not failure. Now let me share something that often surprises people. Rich thinking is not greedy. It is generous. Wealthy minds understand that giving is not the opposite of getting. It is part of the formula. When you contribute, you expand your sense of abundance. When you help others grow, you grow yourself. Scarcity shrinks the mind. Contribution expands it. And finally, rich thinking understands that identity drives behavior. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your self-image. If you see yourself as someone who grows, learns, and improves, your actions will follow. If you see yourself as limited, your results will reflect that belief. Change the identity, and behavior becomes natural. So what is the wealth mindset formula? It is simple, but not easy. Upgrade your thinking, raise your standards, invest in yourself, take responsibility, serve more people, stay disciplined, think long-term, control emotions, choose growth over comfort, and never forget that wealth is built from the inside out. Here is the moral of the story, and I want you to remember this clearly. Money follows mindset, success follows thinking, and your life tomorrow will be shaped by the thoughts you choose to entertain today. If you want more, you must become more. Because rich thinking rules, and when the mind changes, wealth has no choice but to follow.